Vietnam is known for its incredible food, beautiful landscapes, and vibrant cities, but there's another side of Vietnam that deserves to be discovered: its architecture and history. From ancient temples and imperial palaces to centuries-old citadels, Vietnam architecture reflects the country's long and fascinating history. In this video, we're taking you across Vietnam to discover 10 Vietnam historical places that showcase some of the country's most remarkable architecture and cultural heritage. And I'm Liu. Welcome back to GADT Travel.
GADT Travel.
Let's start in Hanoi with one of the most iconic landmarks, the One Pillar Pagoda. Built in 1049 during the Lý Dynasty, this small Buddhist temple was designed to resemble a lotus flower rising from the water. The lotus is an important symbol in Vietnamese culture, representing purity and enlightenment. Despite its small size, the One Pillar Pagoda has become an important part of Vietnam architecture and one of the most recognizable symbols of Hanoi. Moving from the capital to Quảng Ninh, we find a much quieter destination, Loyang Pagoda. Hidden among forests and mountains, this ancient Buddhist site offers a completely different experience from the busy tourist attractions. The architecture blends naturally into its surroundings with traditional roofs, wooden details, stone steps, and peaceful mountain scenery. If you're looking for a lesser-known Vietnam historical place, Loyang is definitely one to add to your list. Next is Khao Pagoda, one of the finest examples of traditional Vietnamese wooden architecture. Dating back nearly 400 years, the complex is especially famous for its impressive wooden bell tower. Look closely and you will notice the carved roofs, intricate wooden structures, and traditional decorative details. Together, they show how beautifully Vietnamese craftsmen combined functionally with artistic design. It's a perfect example of how Vietnamese architecture has preserved its traditional craftsmanship through generations. Back in Hanoi, standing quietly in the middle of One Kim Lake is Turtle Tower. Unlike many other landmarks on this list, Turtle Tower isn't a huge palace or temple. It's a small historic structure, but its location has made it one of the most recognizable symbols of Hanoi. The tower is also connected to the famous legend of the magical turtle and the return of sacred sword. This combination of architecture, history, and legend is exactly what makes many Vietnam historical places so fascinating. Our next stop is Temple of Literature, one of the most important cultural landmarks in Hanoi. Founded in 1070, it was dedicated to Confucius and later became Vietnam's first national university. The complex features traditional courtyard, stone stele, wooden pavilion, and beautifully preserved Vietnamese architectural details. For centuries, this was a place where scholars came to study and prove. Staying in Hanoi, we now travel even deeper into the city's history. This is the Imperial Citadel of Thăng Long. For more than 1,000 years, this area served as an important political center of Vietnam under several dynasties. What makes it particularly fascinating is that the history isn't only visible above ground. Archaeological excavations have uncovered layers of foundations, walls, and architectural remains from different periods. It's almost like walking through different chapters of Vietnamese history in one place. That's why the Imperial Citadel of Thăng Long is one of the most significant Vietnam historical places. Surrounded by dramatic limestone mountains, Ba Dinh Pagoda is one of the largest Buddhist complexes in Vietnam. Unlike the ancient sites on our list, much of the present-day complex is relatively new, but its design draws heavily from traditional Vietnamese Buddhist architecture. Towering pagodas, enormous bronze statues, long corridors, and elaborate decorations create an impressive landscape where architecture and nature come together. It's one of the most spectacular examples of modern Vietnam architecture inspired by traditional heritage. And number 3, we're heading to Huế, the former imperial capital of Vietnam, and this is the Đức Tomb, one of the most beautiful royal tombs in the country. But calling it simply a tomb doesn't really do it justice. The complex includes a lake, bridges, pine trees, pavilions, temples, and gardens. Emperor Tự actually used the site as a retreat during his lifetime. The result is an extraordinary combination of architecture and nature, designed not only to honor an emperor after death, but also to create a peaceful place during his life. It's easy to see why Huế is home to some of the most remarkable Vietnam historical places. Staying in Huế, and here is our number 2, Kiến Trung Palace. This palace is particularly interesting because it represents a fascinating blend of Vietnamese royal architecture and European influence. Its bright yellow walls, red doors, intricate ceramics, and elaborate decorative details make it completely different from many traditional Vietnamese buildings. After being heavily damaged during the wars, the palace was reconstructed based on historical records and surviving architectural evidence. Today, Kiến Trung Palace offers a glimpse into the final chapter of Vietnam's imperial era. And finally, at number 1, the Huế Imperial City. Built during the Nguyen dynasty, this enormous complex served as a political and cultural center of Imperial Vietnam. Behind its massive walls are palaces, temples, gates, gardens, and royal courtyard. It's carefully designed according to traditional principles and royal symbolism. Walking through the imperial city, you can see how architecture was used to express the power, hierarchy, religions, and Vietnamese identity, and that's what makes Huế Imperial City more than just a beautiful landmark. It is a living charter of Vietnamese history and one of the greatest examples of Vietnam architecture. From 1,000 years old citadel in Hanoi to imperial palaces of Huế, these places show how rich Vietnam architecture and history really are. And seeing these places in the real person is completely different experience. And if you like to explore Vietnam's history, culture, and iconic landmarks without having to plan everything yourself, GADT Travel can help. From Hanoi and Ninh Bình to Halong Bay, Huế, Hội An, and beyond, GADT offers a range of carefully designed Vietnam tours with local guides and personalized travel experience. And don't forget to like and subscribe our channel, and see you in the Vietnam. Bye bye.
GADT Travel. Your smile, our happiness.